Welcome back to another episode of the MindFit Movement Podcast. Today I have the one and only Kelsey Grant, also known
Hi.
as Radical Self-Love.
Accurate.
Accurate. So Kels, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm so pumped to be here.
Yeah, I'm pumped for you to be here too.
Yeah, we're going to have fun.
Yeah, I miss you.
Who knows what's going to happen? I miss you too.
I mean, what's it been? It's been over a year now.
Yeah.
Because you're over in Vancouver.
I am.
Yeah.
I am over here, and you are in Australia, which is real far from where I am.
But I mean, like, we're kind of feeling the same sort of vibes because, like, it's winter in Canada, in Vancouver, and it's cold.
Yes.
And it's summer in Melbourne or Australia.
And it's cold.
But it's also fucking cold.
So it's like you never left.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh, that's funny.
I was going to say there's no snow on the mountains, but actually it did snow over the weekend on one of the mountains.
Really?
Yeah, so cold.
Okay, this is so wild. This is just going to show my ignorance, but like I didn't even know Australia got snow.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Up in the higher country where the mountains are.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Actually, in my hometown, which is Red Hill, we got snow one night. Like, I remember driving around and we went up this thing called Arthur's Seat, which is like a mountain. I don't know how high it is, but when we got up to the top, there was snow everywhere.
What?
And I was like, yeah, what the fuck is going on here? So that was pretty crazy. Yeah. So it can get cold close by as well.
Huh. Well, I'm already learning new things and we're like 30 seconds in. So this is fabulous. It's always one of my policies, like go into a conversation or a date or, you know, a new dynamic with the intention of what can I learn that I didn't know before. So that keeps me in like a place of being super curious, but also then I just learn cool shit. And then I feel like so much smarter, and then I can, you know, self-inflate and, you know, put myself on a pedestal like I'm so much better than everyone.
Joking.
Often.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Let's be clear. My shadow really likes to do that.
Yeah.
And then like when I'm in my heart and like connected to my soul, you know, then it's not as appealing to do that kind of stuff. But I would be lying if I said that I was a human who never self-inflated or put myself on a pedestal or thought I was better than other people, because it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a real part of being a human.
True. True. Yeah. And when I spoke with your partner the other day on the podcast that we did, he was talking about how he self-inflates to try and, you know, what's the word? To cope with insecurities. Yeah. Stuff like that.
Yeah. And that wound of incompetency and not feeling good enough. And I think that's really common. You know, we're either going to inflate ourselves or we're going to deflate ourselves, but it's still the same function of I don't feel good enough as I am, and this is just how I'm coping in the moment. And you know, we might have a go-to strategy that we do more often than not, but I think even when we self-inflate, we will, you know, really throw ourselves down the toilet sometimes too. And it's not one or the other. I think we, you know, it depends on the circumstance and it depends on the experience that we're facing, whether we, you know, put ourselves down or we inflate ourselves up, but the root of it's the same.
Yeah. And I was telling him how I'm a deflator. So I hide away. And I've noticed that in me, but I'm not, like, I haven't noticed myself self-inflating myself. Maybe I do. But I haven't, I'm yet to see it. And I'm really curious about it because,
and it's one of those things that if we are really familiar with like deflating ourselves, and the self-inflation does hide out in our blind spot. So it'll come out, you know, and other people might be able to see it, but it's in our blind spot. We can't see that. And maybe we code that as like, oh, well, I just know this thing that they don't know. And but the way that we might come across to someone is, I'm inflating myself. I think I'm better than you right now. And, you know, it can be one of those things that is ugly to notice about ourselves. So it makes sense why it hides in the blind spot so often. But I'm sure now that we've had this conversation and we've kind of brought some light to it, it'll be easier to see, oh, am I like, and sometimes it'll just be in our head that we're doing it. It might not even be like words that are coming out of our mouth, but the narrative that's going on in our mind of like, wow, this person is an idiot. Like, and if the second we judge someone like that, we're already putting ourselves in the one-up position.
Oh, yeah.
And so anytime that we're in judgment of someone else, we have assumed that one-up position. We've assumed the self-inflation. I'm on the pedestal, they're down below me. So that's that's why I say it hangs out in the blind spot, because it's so tricky to spot unless we have that distinction of, oh, whenever I'm judging someone, I'm one-upping them. And I might just be doing it in my head. I might never say those things out loud to them, but I'm doing it in my mind. And if I'm doing it in my mind, I'm going to be, you know, that's going to come through my energy in some way, shape, or form. Like they might just be able to pick up like, ooh, I feel uncomfortable right now, or I don't feel totally safe to be myself in this moment. And it could be because the other person is in a place of hyper judgment and it actually isn't a super safe space.
Yeah, totally. I remember one of my mates telling me when we were younger, he's like, you know, you're really judgmental. And I was kind of like, what? What do you mean? No, I'm not. Like, I like a lot of people, you know, like, and then as the years went on and I started looking at myself, I realized that I can be fucking judgmental.
Yeah,
And
join the club.
yeah. And then, like, I was just like, oh man, you're a bad person. You know, you judge the fuck out of people. And then I was like, hang on, man. I think it's pretty normal to judge people. Like, you just got to catch yourself and yeah, don't beat yourself up over it, because I think it's a normal human thing, right?
100%. And the irony is, like, the second you realize that you were a judgmental person, you judged yourself for being judgmental.
Exactly.
And like, and so we think that by judging and criticizing ourselves for being judgmental and critical, that will somehow balance it and cancel it out. Like, but it doesn't work that way. And I think where the integration happens is when we can spot it, and like we can name it, we can tame it. So if I can spot that moment where I'm being judgmental, and I can meet it with some compassion or even some neutrality of like, oh, I see that I'm doing that thing, that I'm judging this other person, or I'm judging myself. If I'm judging myself, what's going on in me that I'm having a hard time being with? If I'm judging another person, what's going on in me that I'm having a hard time being with?
Yeah. Totally.
And that's coming out in the form of judgment. Or it could also be, is there something going on in this dynamic with this other person that I'm not okay with? Like, is there a boundary that needs to be set? Is there a need that needs to be declared? Is there information that if they had, it could improve the quality of this connection? But I'm withholding that information, so I can't actually co-create a better dynamic with this person. And so I will judge them for not knowing the thing that it's impossible for them not to know because I haven't told them. And then, you know, we can just spiral from there. Like, it's wild when we call it out, but it's so normal as like everyday life.
Yeah.
And it is a normal thing to judge people. I don't know that it's a natural thing to judge people. Maybe it is, I don't know, but you know, normal in the sense that it's normalized, we all do it. And if we criticize ourselves for that, we're going to keep doing it. Versus if I accept the fact that I'm human and that sometimes I will be judgmental, then it gives me more room to work with the judgment when it fires up, instead of the judgment comes, I can't be with it, I can't accept it, So then it spirals me out of control.
Mm.
And then I either like go down this self-deprecating spiral, like, trashing my body or trashing my relationships and doing all these destructive things. Or I just like withdraw altogether, and like there's so much that we could avoid in terms of like imploding our life and our relationships if we could just accept the fact that, hey, I'm human. Part of being human means I'm going to judge myself or judge other people sometimes. And the point isn't to eradicate the judgment. The point is to work with it when it comes.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. But I think that's a perfect segue actually into talking about who you are and what you do in this world.
Oh yeah, I guess we never said that, did we? We just like slipped back into like chum mode and like, oh hey bud, like let's just have a chit chat here.
Yeah.
Forget that other people are listening.
Oh,
Oh, that's funny.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell people what your experience of me is, and then I can fill in any blanks?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So, funny story actually, how Kelsey and I met. I was sitting in a cafe reading a book with my cousin who was also reading another book. This was in Vancouver, Canada. And so as I'm easily distracted when I'm reading books. Like I could read a page and then be thinking about something totally different. Anyway, so I'm sitting down and Julian, my cousin, he goes to the toilet, and then I hear this woman next to me talking to this man about sex. And I'm like, I'm like, what the fuck? And then like, because kind of like for me, sex wasn't spoken about, like growing up. So I was like, I'm in a public place and this chick's talking to this man about sex. And like all this stuff went through my head. I can't really remember what it was, but I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Right. And then, so for anyone listening, basically it was Kelsey was sitting there, and
yeah,
then
it was me.
Yeah. And then you turned over and you pointed at my cousin's book and you said to your buddy, and that is a fucking good book to read. And then, and I kind of looked at her. I kind of looked at Kelsey. I was like, what? This book? She's like, yeah, this book. And then Julian came back, sat down, and I was like, hey, this lady really likes your book. And then you guys started talking about the book. And then we all just had this fucking like deep conversation, like went into another orbit. And literally it was 2 hours later.
Yep.
And we became good friends. Yeah. And then we started following each other on Instagram. And then, so yeah, basically that's how I met Kelsey.
It's over
just a random, like listening into somebody's conversation about sex.
Yeah. Our meeting was very magical.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite things about my connection with you and Jules is like how that relationship began. And you were also reading a book that I had read.
Yeah.
And like both of you, I was like, I remember like my experience of that, talking with Trevor, and I actually don't even remember that we were talking about sex. That's so funny that that's like the thing that defines me in your mind as our like meeting point. But I remember seeing the book that you were reading and seeing the book that Julian was reading and just thinking to myself, I'm like, yes, more evidence of really amazing men doing this fucking work on the planet. Yeah. And then I was like, and they're good looking, like they're attractive men who are like, just, care about getting their shit together. Like I didn't know anything about you guys, but like, I was like, okay, these guys are around my age. They care about this type of work. And it was, part of my philosophy in life is like, go collect evidence of things that confirm the reality that you want to see in the world. So if you're single and you want to meet a guy or a girl or a person that has, similar beliefs to you, you can't run around with an idea that no one like that exists.
Yeah.
and expect to meet them. And
Mm.
so I was in a part of my life where I was just collecting evidence of like, see, there are good guys out here doing really powerful work on themselves.
Mm.
And then, you know, having the conversation I was having with Trevor was like this emotional conversation. And so here are three men in front of me who are just extraordinary and doing the work. And then we end up, you know, having this point of being able to introduce ourselves because of those books that you were reading.
Yeah.
And it made it very easy to strike up a conversation and then end up in this vortex together, which it really is the defining thing of our relationship with, at least my relationship with you and Jules, is like this element of going into a vortex and like getting transported into another dimension through our conversations, or like giggle fits, or like whatever it is, chicken goggles, like whatever
Chicken
it is that we're doing, you know.
That is the funniest game I think I've ever played.
Oh, me too. Me too. And it was just such a wonderful meeting. And then like, as soon as we all started talking, I knew that I would forever be friends with the two of you.
Mm. Yeah.
Like, yep, these guys are part of my soul pod.
Mm.
And like, cool. Like, I love when these moments happen where these new characters are introduced to the story of my life. I didn't have to force that. I didn't have to go and hustle for that or like be on a hunt for it. Like, I just had to be available to the present moment.
Mm.
And when I was available to the present moment, then the universe is like, okay, you two, enter stage right. And here we go.
Yeah.
This new chapter begins.
Yeah, exactly.
It was so cool.
Yeah.
I loved meeting you guys. My favorite story.
And what I love is just like, we're on opposite sides of the globe, and you know, we cannot talk to each other for 6 months, and then like maybe a couple of Instagram, you know, messages here and there, but like, and just like, you know, pick up the phone and it's like we saw each other yesterday, you know.
100%.
And I think that's amazing. And yeah, it feels amazing to have people like that in my corner, you know what I mean? Like in a friendship.
Mm-hmm.
So really good.
Always in your corner, Aunt. Always.
Yeah. And back at you.
Thank you.
So before you mentioned about how you were saying, oh, look at these men, they're doing the work, right? So for anybody listening, because it is a big word used, thrown around, you know, social media and stuff and personal development and all that kind of stuff. It's like, do the work, you know, like, what are you going to do to start working on yourself? Like, so would you be able to give a bit of a description on what the work is?
Yeah, I think the simplest way that I understand it is the pathway to greater self-awareness. You know, the work is anything that allows you to know yourself on a more intimate level. Because the more intimately you're connected with yourself, the more available you are to life, and the more available you are to relationships with other people of all kinds, whether those are friendship, family, romantic. But it really does start with the relationship you have with you. And so I think the work is anything that allows more of who you've always been to come online. Because we live in a world where we can be very muted, and these parts of us that we were kind of born with go dormant, and they go dormant as a way to survive and be in community with other people. But then it eventually gets to a point where it doesn't feel so good anymore. We're like, oh, something's missing from life. Like, I know that this can't just be it. And we start seeking a new path. And the path is actually this journey back to yourself. It's the journey back to the reclamation of these parts that we may have disowned, either consciously or unconsciously, or maybe we had to, you know, put into like a dormant sleep in order to exist in our family system or get through junior high or high school. Like, those are like really trying times, and I don't think we talk about that enough. Like, there's so much that happens in in junior high, high school, where kids learn to abandon themselves in order to belong. And so at some point we get to a breaking point about that. We're like, I can't just keep abandoning myself in order to stay. And usually that will take like a rupturing in a relationship, or like the loss of a job, or like a health issue, in order to kind of wake us up to, oh, something isn't working here. And the work can be so many different things. And anyone that tells you that there's only one way of doing the work is a fucking liar. And you shouldn't listen to them. I don't really use the word should very often, but I will in this context. Because there are so many pathways and so many avenues to that reclamation. And personal development and like doing courses and working with coaches, like that's one way. But you can go the path of like yoga, or you can, be, into fitness and like adventuring, and you can get a lot of those same lessons and those same realizations without having to, work in a course or go sit in an ashram for 10 days and not say anything. Like, it really comes down to what feels most true for you to do. And
totally.
what is most true for you to do today, because what's most true today might be different than 10 years from now. And that's okay. Like, maybe now you listen to podcasts, and that's the way you kind of spark these moments of, oh, there's another piece of self-awareness. Oh, I never thought about it like that. Oh, does that work for me? Or like, oh, I am judgmental. Or, oh, yeah, I can see that there might be some truth in that. And we can have that type of interaction with life if we just put a lens of curiosity on before we step out of the house every day. If we're willing to learn from life, life will, do its part. And it'll show us the path. It'll show us the resource. It'll show us, a guide or a teacher or a conversation that will blow our paradigm open and set us on this new track. So that's what I think the work is.
And just to touch, just like a little version of it.
Yes. just a tiny answer.
And just to touch on how you said there's all different ways to do the work. My mum always had this saying, right? And you're not going to like it because you really like cats. You're in love with cats. But
I do. Look, I have a cat pillow. This is my kitty that passed away like a couple months ago. My girlfriend got a pillow of her made.
Rest in peace.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to derail your story.
That's okay. So mum had this saying. It was, there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Oh God.
Now, I don't know why you would skin a cat in the first place, but I
feel like it's applicable to any animal that you might hunt and like eat.
Oh yeah, I guess like a big cat. Big tiger. So anyway, enough of that weird skinning cat stuff. Bloody hell.
I get what you're saying. Like,
what did you do to me, Mum? What did you turn me into?
Cat hater.
Yeah. So we kind of didn't really go into introducing who you were. We just kind of said how we met you. So basically, you're a love and relationship educator, right? So part of your mission on this planet is to educate people on love and relationships.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. You got it.
And so your Instagram handle is Radical Self-Love. Now, do you believe that it starts with loving yourself first before we can start loving other people?
Yeah, this is like a really interesting conundrum, because like part of me, like obviously is very much about self-love. And like, I think the root of being able to love another powerfully in the form of partnership, absolutely. it starts within ourselves and connecting to ourselves. But do we learn how to love within first? I don't think so. Like, I think that we learn what love is through relationships with other first, because our very first experience of connection is being fused with our mothers.
Mm.
And then we're born into the world and we're dependent on other for, a good amount of years before we can even learn how to feed ourselves. And so we learn what love is initially through other. But when we start walking the path of reclamation and, setting the new tone for our life, I think that work we do need to start within. And we
Right.
need to learn how to accept and love these parts of us that historically have been very challenging to accept, because our relationship with other has conditioned us in a way to self-reject and self-abandon in order to belong.
Mm.
So I think it's a both and, like, yes and no. Like, and I really don't like this is the only way, and like it can only, you can only love someone if you love yourself first. Well,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
actually a lie, because the only way love is by being connected to another person, because that's your first experience of love in human form, at least.
Mm.
Like, I don't know what happens before we become human or after, but like, at least on this human plane, like, our first experience of love is in relationship to another person.
And that being our parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, if we really want to get to the root of it, it's our mother, because
Okay.
all of us are fused to a mother as we incubate in her womb.
Mm.
So we're actually developing as a human while being connected, like fused to another person. And then after we're born, then it expands into mother, father, parents, caregivers. Um, and it's not just solely on the mother, but like, that is, every human being has that in common.
Mm.
Like, you cannot be here on this planet unless you are incubating in another person first. Like, at least science has not taken us there yet,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
as far as I know, like, maybe, I don't know, who knows, but for the majority of human beings, their first relationship is the one with their mother.
Mm.
And so I think it's just a really important thing to address, that we learn love from others first, and then later on in life, when we hit that breaking point, then we get to challenge, like, is that the full picture of love, or is there something more to this? And it's at that point that we go inward and find, like, do I actually love myself? Which really comes down to, do I accept the wholeness and the totality of myself as a human being, including my shadow, including those parts that make me difficult to love, including, the fact that I'm a judgmental judger,
Mm.
sometimes, and like, I'm
Yeah.
critical and mean, and I've said things that have hurt people, I've said things that have hurt myself, like, I've done things that hurt people, I've done things that hurt myself. Like, can I accept that makes the whole of me? And when I accept that makes the whole of me, then I can choose what I'm going to actually act through.
Mm.
And I can choose to not be run by those elements, but run from my connection to my heart and my spirit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think, love, we first experience love in relationship to other. That's often where we're wounded as
Mm-hmm.
well. And then the path of healing all of that includes building that relationship with yourself. And then through that relationship of, like, rebooted to yourself, then we repair with other. And that is kind of like the human journey, in my
Mm.
experience.
Mm.
At least, like, this new, pathway of humans who are committed to, living more full and fulfilled lives. Like, we can't be fulfilled in life if we're disconnected from ourselves and
Mm.
disconnected from other people.
Yeah.
And so there's like this whole new generation, and like, there's multiple generations of people who are really starting to walk this path and care about themselves and care about each other and care about the planet.
Yeah.
And I think it will become more normalized. But we're just kind of on the precipice of this being like the normal thing to do.
Yeah. And the more the people use their voice and put it out there, especially with social media, which I think is fucking amazing platform to get this sort of stuff out there and make it more normalized so people can feel comfortable in looking deeply into what runs them, what runs their life, their psychology and all that kind of stuff.
100%.
And I think, the world would be such a better place when people do start doing the work. They're going to be better relationships, so less family violence. People are going to have better relationships with themselves. It's going to be less suicide. So I think it's
less
amazing.
burning of the Amazon forest, because we actually care about the planet, because we care about ourselves and we care about each other.
Yeah exactly.
And we care about the impact that we're leaving on this planet. But like, we can't actually care about those things, in my opinion, when we don't even care about ourselves. And I don't mean from like this egotistical place. I mean genuinely love and care for ourselves.
Yeah.
And care for our emotional well-being, because that is an area where we could use some improvement, is in our emotional intelligence and our emotional integration. There's just a lot of volatility out in the world right now, and that's because we don't know how to actually work with our emotions when they come up. Instead, we just vomit them onto other people, or we swallow them and they eat us alive.
Yeah. So this is a massive question.
Perfect.
But I'm just going to use one sort of segue into it. So I love, on the start of your podcast, when you do your little intro, you say this line, and it's real love like desires you to meet yourself fully, or real love wants you to meet yourself fully. So that is a big question on how do you meet yourself fully. But as you spoke about before, about meeting your shadow. So what's a shadow?
It's the parts of us that we've disowned. That's the simplest way to understand it. It's the parts of you that you don't want to admit are there.
Right.
So when we're like, for example, we'll just keep coming back to this because it's an easy one to get. When we are judging someone, it is very difficult to embrace the fact that we're judgmental, even though we're actively judging in that moment. There's this split, this dissociation that's happening between, okay, if you're judging, that means you're judgmental. It doesn't mean that that's all of what you are, but there is a part of you that is judgmental. And that can be really difficult to embrace. Same is true, if you have experiences of feeling jealous or insecure or envious or incompetent, like anything that this is how I think of it. Like, what are the things you don't want people to find out about you?
Right.
Because whatever it is that you don't want people to find out about you, that holds the key to unlocking your shadow.
Okay.
Because we will have a vested interest in keeping people as far away from that material as possible. And if we are actively like pushing people away and be like, I hope they never find this out about me, because if they did, I would not be lovable. So it's whatever you think makes you unlovable. And it's whatever you think you shouldn't be feeling or shouldn't be happening in your experience. All of that is shadow material. So it's stuff that we like push down in hopes that if we push it down far enough, it'll just disappear. But it doesn't.
No.
It doesn't. And so we can tell what is in our shadow in what we judge in other people. But then also look at those times in your life where you're feeling stressed. Who do you become when things don't go your way? That will give you a lot of information as to what's going on in your shadow and what material you have to own that has been disowned. And that ownership looks like, ooh, there is a part of me that gets really vindictive. This was like a tough one for me, because who wants to be labeled vindictive?
Correct.
Right? But it was there. Like, eye for an eye justice through and through. Like, you hurt me, I'm gonna fuck you up even worse.
Yeah.
And you won't even know I've done it because I'm gonna be so fucking sneaky about it.
Yeah.
You know, and like there's ways in which I can kind of really earn someone's trust. And like way back in the day, I would use that against them.
Yeah, right.
I would find out their vulnerability and then I would extort that. You know, I'd push on it. When things didn't go my way, I would go straight for that jugular.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so until I started owning the fact that there is a part of me that is vindictive, there's a part of me that is volatile, I could not actually work with that part because I was too busy disowning it all the time. I was too busy inflating myself, being like, I am so much better than everybody else, that like I couldn't see what was in my blind spot, which is, you know, all the shadow material. And once I was like, will the world end if I admit to myself that there are times in which I have been this way? And so I did it, and then the world didn't fall apart, and my world didn't fall apart. And I was like, maybe there's something to this. Like, what are all those other things that I am so afraid of people judging me for? That's another way. Like, what are you afraid of being judged for? And like, can you own that either that's something you judge yourself for, or it's something that you judge in other people, which means we can't be with that aspect. What if we just called it out ourselves? Because if I own up to the fact that sometimes I'm vicious and vindictive, if someone is like, Kelsey, you are vicious and vindictive, I can be like, yeah, I can see some truth in that.
Yeah.
I don't have to defend it. I don't have to fight it. I don't have to be like, no, I'm not. Because the second we go into, no, I'm not that way, we're in our shadow.
Yeah.
And when we have contacted those parts of us and we work to create some intimacy with them, of like, hey, you're not like this demon part of me. You do cause a lot of, you know, distress, but you're not a demon, and like you can be part of me, but you don't get to take the steering wheel of my life anymore. I'm going to put you in the caboose. I'm going to put you in the trunk of the car. You get to still be along for the ride, but like you need to know your place. You know, and when we start to do that alchemy, if someone was to come to me and say, hey, you know, you were such an asshole when you said this to me, and I could be like, I'll still feel the impulse to defend, and then I'll be like, and I can catch it before it comes out of my mouth, and I can say, you know what, I can see some truth in that. You know what, you're not wrong. I did do that. You're right. I did do that. And then once I am able to approach it that way, guess what? It dissolves the charge interpersonally, and then we can actually begin the repair process. But if I was to approach it from the space of I need to defend my victim position, like you're attacking me, no way, I'm going to defend myself. Well, there's no space for repair. There's no space for understanding. And we just anchor further into that shadow material. And then it just keeps coming up more and more intensely the more we anchor into it and deny its reality, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so if you don't work with your shadow and meet your shadow, how can that have, what effects can that have on relationships?
Well, it destroys them.
Right. Plain and simple terms.
Plain and simple. Like it's the thing that will implode your relationship.
Okay.
Because, resentment, criticism, stonewalling, defensiveness, all of that is a byproduct of disowning certain parts of ourselves and not essentially taking accountability for all that we bring to the table. And when I enter into a relationship, so does my shadow. And if I refuse to be accountable for that, well, then my shadow is just going to run amok, and it's going to, inspire me to act in ways to push this other person away. It has a vested interest in not being found out. And so intimate relationship is the place where all of this material comes up for review.
Yeah.
And so this is why when we get into a relationship, all of a sudden we're like, I am acting like a total nut bar here. Like, what is happening? Like, I wasn't like this when I was single.
Yeah.
And that's because there's this intimacy that gets activated. And in the space of that intimacy and the emotional safety of a connection, all of this material that has been locked away starts to make its way into our field of view so that we can actually understand it, clear it, work with it, integrate it. And that's why relationships are such a sacred container, and why it drives me so bananas that people are just not that conscious about who they choose to be in a relationship with. They're like, anyone will do. As long as you choose me, that's good enough. We don't really have a lot of criteria there when we're operating, from this unconscious lens. And then we get into these dynamics where that material starts to come up, and then we either re-wound ourselves or we wound another person. And that can be really damaging. But, for some people it's necessary. I had to go through a bunch of relationships like that. I'm not saying you should try and avoid that, but if we were able to choose a little bit more consciously of all right, these sacred parts of me, because your shadow is a sacred part of you, because it actually leads you to greater liberation. And that isn't something that should just be tossed into the hands of just anybody. If we want to make sure that the person in front of us has the emotional intelligence and the connection with themselves in order to hold those parts of you sacred, and your tender spots, these parts of you that historically have never been seen or loved, or your wounds from past relationships. We don't want a partner who's just gonna poke that and infect it even more. But that's what will happen if we're not discerning when we're dating. And then we just welcome anyone in, and they're with their dirty, grubby hands, and they're like, oh, show me your wounds and let me dig in there. And then it gets all infected, and you're mystified one day of how the fuck did I get here?
Yeah.
What is happening in this relationship? Maybe I'm not lovable. Maybe there's something, fundamentally flawed within me, which then here's the shadow. It's starting to come up. Anytime those stories of being unworthy and not choosable and not lovable, we have some shadow material that's starting to rise. And so we want to make sure in a relationship that we're choosing people who are willing to work with us inside of that. I know that when I bring these tender spots to Jamie, he's not going to poke at them. And he's not going to infect them even more, but he creates this really safe container of, hey, that must have been really tough. Or I can understand why historically you haven't felt safe to bring that to a relationship. Or there's just this degree of love and compassion that's there with him because of the way that we vetted each other in the beginning. That was a very slow process.
Yeah.
Very intentional.
And I love how you just went into that, because that's something that I wanted to talk about.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. And, and it's about how do we know if a person is right for us? Because from my experience, I tend to fall for people that are toxic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and even to the point where, like, at the start when we're talking and getting to know each other, it sounds like she is actually interested um in my world and in what goes on inside of my brain, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and past traumas and stuff, but then starts to use it against me, sort of like a narcissist, right?
Yeah, sort of like what I used to do.
Were you a narcissist?
I
Not
don't like.
quite.
Yeah, and like narcissism is a spectrum, and like a
Yeah.
full blown narcissist is like only like something that can be medically determined, like
Yeah.
by a professional.
Yeah.
But I do believe that there's a spectrum of narcissism, and that yes, all of us do have narcissistic traits
Yeah.
and tendencies, and that it could be an adaptation that, you know, I only think about me, and I've got to only think about me in order to survive.
Mm.
And different stages or chapters of our lives, or different even relational dynamics, will bring out these parts of us. But yeah, I'd say like in those pockets of my life, 100%, I was way more narcissistic than I might be now, only because I'm willing to own those parts of me that are narcissistic,
Yeah.
and own like, yeah, sometimes I will only be thinking about me,
Yeah.
and like that's the reality. And like
Yeah.
I'm going to do my best to balance, you know, my relationship to me and my relationship to you, but sometimes it kind of gets away on me.
Mm.
And um I don't know how we kind of got there in terms of you were talking about your dating situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Back on topic, Kelsey. Land the plane.
How do we know how do we know if a person is right for us? Like,
Okay.
what you mentioned the word vetting in the
Hmm.
dating. Yeah. So, like,
Hmm.
would you be able to jump into a bit of that and explain some
Yeah.
for us, please?
Yes, I'd love to. So you bring up a very important thing, and that is anyone can be on their best behavior at the beginning.
Yeah.
And if we make a choice within like 3 weeks of knowing someone, well, we're usually in for a rude awakening, because there's no way for you to know who someone is in 3 weeks,
Mm.
even 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But at about the 8-week mark, if someone isn't actually integrated in what they're presenting to you, you're going to start to see cracks in
Mm.
the way that they are relating. You're
Mm.
going to start to see inconsistencies with who they say they are and how they're actually showing up and what they're actually doing. So the way to actually vet someone is by paying attention to their behavior, not what they're saying. And that can be really tricky, because the wounded parts of us, we love a good fairy tale.
Oh
We're like,
yeah.
yes, take me to fantasy land. Let's go. Where's my ticket? Where do I sign up? Like, get me on that train, you know? And
Oh yeah.
we can be swept up in the romanticized, like, fairy tale that this
Mm.
person is spinning about who they are. And we're like,
Mm.
oh, finally, this person has come to rescue me
Yeah.
from my pain. They've come to rescue me from, you know, the plight of being me in my life. And if we go and we're choosing from that place, we're going to end up with people who just end up rewounding us. But if we have this bandwidth, okay, 8 weeks, that is about, like, it's usually about 6 weeks, but like 8 weeks, like, let's just extend it so it's 2-month mark. Like, in a 2-month mark, you're going to start to see what someone's made of, especially if we are allowing that sexual aspect to be like the final area that we test for, which for most people is almost impossible for them to do. Like,
Okay.
but I want to know, like, is if the sex is bad, like, I don't want to stay.
Yeah.
And so it's like this, like, roundabout justification of like, well, I just want to bang it out real fast, and then I wonder why I'm so destabilized,
Yeah.
because it's very hard to see things clearly after we've bonded ourselves through sex. And I'm not saying you can't have sex while you're in the dating phase. Absolutely. But like, if we could wait a little while longer, you'll start to see these inconsistencies, or you'll see the consistencies in their character. And for me, I'm like, well, I would rather like fuse like my energy and connect my energy with someone that is consistent with who that they say that they are and how they're actually showing up in the world. I want to make sure that this person that I'm having sex with is going to be really respectful. No, even if we realize that, you know what, this isn't really aligned for us, but we can still have that conversation through the lens of respect and kindness and love and compassion. But if we don't vet people early on and like we jump into bed with them right away and we want a partnership, like that's kind of the caveat here. Like you can have sex with someone right away if all you're looking for is a lover.
Yeah.
Or if you're just looking for a casual dating dynamic, sure. Like that's not, but like I'm talking about dating for partnership. Dating for partnership is a whole other ball game. And if we want to date for partnership, we want to make sure that, you know, after we sleep with this person and we're going to be a little vulnerable, you know, and both people are going to feel that vulnerability because there's that connection that happens on a spiritual, emotional, and physical level through sex. And if that person doesn't have the skills to navigate that with respect and tenderness and kindness and compassion, it is going to like literally pour salt in every single emotional wound that you have. And then it's going to give you so much more fuel for that story of, see, I'm not lovable. See, I'm not choosable. See, there's something fundamentally flawed about me. Instead of, maybe there's just a flawed way that I'm vetting people. Like, it's not that there's something like so wrong with me.
Yeah.
There's just some tweaks to my process that I could, you know, shift.
Yeah.
And if I shifted these things, like I would have to meet myself more fully. So like you were saying at the intro of our podcast, like true love actually invites you to meet yourself more fully. And what better way to meet yourself by like taking sex off the table, at least right away, and noticing what comes up for you. Noticing, do you use sex as a way to extort connection, as a way to extort commitment, thinking that if I have sex with this person, then they'll stay. They could never leave me then. Like once they see how good I am in bed, they'll love me for me. How about you let them get to know you for you and then determine, does that feel right for me and the relational dynamic here to have sex? And a lot of people will start to have sex with each other before they even know if their deal breakers align or if their non-negotiables align. And then they're mystified when that information comes up after. They're like, I hear, because I work with a lot of women, so then I hear the complaint of like, you know, he had sex with me and like he doesn't even want a relationship. And then I have to ask the question, well, did you ask if you wanted a relationship before you banged him?
Yeah.
Well, no. Well, why not? Well, what if he didn't want one? I'm like, well, isn't it better to know that he might not want a relationship before you bang him and that becomes a very vulnerable thing for you?
Yeah.
Or now we have to deal with the aftermath of the vulnerability hangover, but also the fact that like as women, when we have sex for the first time with someone new, our body will release bonding hormone. And if we have an orgasm with the person that we're having sex with, the same amount of bonding hormone that bonds a mother to her newborn baby is released. And it is directed at the person that was responsible for co-creating or at least being in the presence of that orgasm.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's kind of a big deal that we want to account for.
Right.
And like the bonding hormone does release for men, but the effects of that generally are about 3 days. For women, it lasts 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So we can already see if men and women are having sex with each other, why there could be so much mischief that's happening after the effects of that, because she's fused to him like the same way that she would be fused to a baby to ensure its survival. And then he's like connected, but not to the same degree, at least for the same amount of time. And so that can be really, really traumatizing if we don't know what's happening there.
Yeah.
If we understand this is what's happening when we have sex with someone, and then we can be responsible for like, okay, if I know that's going to happen, I really want to be sure that this person could really be respectful of my needs for maybe communication or connection after we have sex with each other. And if you're afraid that the person you're about to bang won't even call you the next day, you shouldn't bang them. You should get to know them a little bit more until you're certain that you could request that from them and say, you know what, something that's really important for me to feel respected and cherished and connected is after I have sex with someone for the first time, and all times really, I really need touch points the next day.
Yeah.
Does that work for you? And if it works for them, great, you can proceed. If it doesn't work for them, then you've gone as far as you can go with them. It's not about like presenting a demand and saying, you have to call me the next day. It's checking it out. Like, would that actually work for you? And if it doesn't, then we know we've gone as far as we can go. And that's okay, because every person that we date is practice for our person, or will end up being our person that we end up in a relationship with.
Yeah.
And that doesn't guarantee forever, but like it guarantees that, okay, we're going to be clear that they're either practice for our next relationship or they are our next relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Either way, we're winning, because when you practice something, you get better at it. You know, no one starts, playing soccer and they're at the Premier League the first time they kick a soccer ball.
Yeah.
They have to learn the rules of the game. They have to really hone their skills. They have to figure out what position they want to play. And then practice. Like, we have no problem understanding this when it comes to professional, like, sports. We see like these people have literally dedicated themselves to the practice of this craft for usually about 18 to 20 years of their life before they make it as a professional athlete. And yet when it comes to relationships, you want to be a professional relationshipper, but you're not willing to put in that practice for the same amount of time. And yet you feel entitled to have the result of the championship without doing any practice for that. Well, the universe has a funny sense of humor and be like, well, fine. You might think that that's what's going to happen, but we're going to sprinkle a few lessons in here for you.
Yeah.
You're going to have to learn how to practice one way or another.
So you mentioned about like, for instance, if a woman has sex with a guy and then she wants to hear from him the next day, is that like expressing a need? So like for everybody, like, we have all different needs, and for her to feel like emotionally safe and secure and to see whether this guy is compatible, she's expressing a need to him.
Totally. Yeah.
And sorry, you go.
And I was just going to say that might not be the need that every woman has or every person has.
Yeah.
That's just my personal need in that arena. So I just use that as an example.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a need. And in order for me to feel really secure in myself and making a decision that is aligned for me, I have to advocate for that need before it's gone past the point of no return. You can't advocate for your need after the fact and expect the other person to just go along with it.
Right.
You have to give them that information before, let them choose. And then if they choose, then you can freaking relax and have a great time having sex with this person.
Yeah.
And then you can relax knowing that they are going to call you the next day.
Yeah.
Because they've made that agreement with you. And, I and this is where it also becomes a really important thing to be connected to yourself, because there are people who will tell you one thing and then do another. And this will happen a lot before that 8-month mark, or the 8-week mark. I mean, so if you say, like, you meet this person and like you've known them for like 2 days, and you're like, hey, I really want to bang you, and in order for us to have sex, I need you to call me tomorrow. And then the other person's like, yeah, for sure, because they want to bang you.
Yeah.
There's no vested emotional interest there. Like, there's no emotional connection that's been built yet. So yeah, if they're a shitty human, or like they just want to have sex, they don't actually want a relationship, they might agree to that. But if we vet someone for about 8 weeks, we'll know the quality of their character by that point. And then we'll actually get a cue from our body if we were to bring up that need and they say yes, and you can sense that it's a no, and there's something off there. It's your job to pay attention to the cue of your body and trust that your intuition just fired for a reason. And then check it out with them and be like, does that actually work for you? Or like, is there something that you want to share with me about that? Like, because if that isn't workable for you, that's okay. And then we might have to normalize that it's okay if it doesn't work for them. But what's most important is that we are honest about what our needs actually are and what we can and can't provide.
Yeah.
And if you vetted someone for about 8 weeks and you haven't been, hyper focused on that sexual energy, you're going to be able to assess pretty easily whether or not them saying, yeah, I can call you tomorrow, is truth or a lie. And, sometimes people slip through the cracks. So like, there isn't this one size fits all magic wand that will ensure that you never get hurt again, or like this person will actually follow through on their words. Like, but you can do everything you can possibly do on your side. That doesn't mean that you can control what happens on the other side. There's still free will, and they still might fuck it up. And if that were to happen, then we would have to circle in with a boundary. Like, okay, well, I asked you for what I needed. You promised that you would do that. You didn't do it. So now I can't actually see you anymore.
Yeah.
It would be that hard of a line for me. If I had declared that need, they agreed, we had sex, and then they went AWOL, like, there would be definitely that wounded part of me that's like, tries to fire up of like, oh, I need to convert this person to choose me now, because they're showing indifference. They're showing that they don't care. And so I have to know that that part of me is there. It's in my shadow. And I'm like, oh, no. And like, this is boundary time.
Yeah.
This person has showed me that they do not meet the criteria to continue any further along the path of my life with me.
Yeah.
Hard no. Yeah. Bye. Have a nice incarnation.
And
then,
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
And we really have to stick to ourselves and don't abandon ourselves when that does happen, because, for a lot of us, because of a wound of like not feeling loved and thinking that we don't deserve love.
Yeah.
Even though that person we just had sex with didn't follow through with what they said they were going to do, we have like the last person on earth syndrome, like,
yeah.
This is going to be the last person on earth that I, that might love me. So, don't worry about it. Maybe he'll ring me next time, or, something like that. And then we abandon ourselves.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point that you bring up, that anytime we're chasing like that, we're abandoning ourselves. Anytime you're hustling for someone to choose you, you've already abandoned yourself. And so choosing yourself means walking away from someone who insults your soul. And someone who doesn't give a fuck about your emotional interior and your needs and your boundaries is someone who is insulting to your soul.
Yeah.
And they're very attractive to those wounded parts of you. Like, the wounded part of you is like, this is my person. And then your soul is like, this is so not your person. This is everything your person is not.
Yeah.
And so we have to choose in that moment, are we going to align with our soul, or are we just going to keep rewounding ourselves over and over and over? And usually we keep rewounding ourselves until we get to that breaking point and we're like, fuck this shit. Something has to change. I have to change. Yeah. And then we're on that path of doing the work.
Yeah.
It all comes full circle.
It all comes full circle. Exactly. And yeah, I don't know if it takes other people longer to be like, fuck this shit. Like, I'm over it. I need to do the work, or I want to do the work. But yeah, like I've found with myself since like starting to do the work and learning about personal development and stuff like that, when something happens, I don't shy away from it now. I run towards it, right? Like, I was kind of seeing this chick, getting to know her, like earlier on in this year, and her love was very push-pull, right? It was like give, share of like affection, and then like cut down, judge me, attack my character, tell me that, say some hurtful things, blah, 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 right? But then give again, right? So, and I was attracted to that. Even though I didn't really like it, like my anxiety went through the roof because it wasn't right for my soul. I still chased it. And like after it all happened, I was like, what the fuck just happened? Like what, why did I do this? Like, because once I was out of it and then I could look back at it all, I was like, oh, that wasn't right. Like red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag, right? And I was like, but that doesn't matter. Like, that's not going to change anything, spotting the red flags. I need to work out why I was doing what I was doing, right? So then, yeah, like, and it came back from like a core wound of when I was a young boy with my mum, right? And like, bless mum, she's a beautiful mum, awesome mum.
Of course.
And she did what
she's human.
Yeah, exactly. She's human and did what she thought was right with the resources she had at the time.
Of course.
Right. And yeah, like, I'm not going to get into too much detail about it. But it's a wound of mine now that, that like I have, I don't know how to explain it, but like the love that I believe that I deserve is like very push-pull kind of thing,
hot,
right?
Cold, there one day, gone the next.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think that's super interesting how like we're attracted to that. And actually something that when I interviewed Mark the other day, he was talking about chemistry, and he's you need to stop dating people like that you have chemistry with, because the chemistry is often like lying to you, right?
Yeah.
Because you think, and if you could go into a little bit more of that, that'd be sweet.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, chemistry is often just your wound trying to mate with another person.
Right.
That's why it's so intoxicating. And then we have these heartmate connections that feel much more steady and much more reliable. And then we're like, ugh, boring. Like, no thanks. What a dud. Like, oh, you actually want to be available to me? No thanks. I think I'll chase this person who is indifferent about me.
Yeah.
And at least from my understanding, like, that starts to shift when we are able to meet those parts of ourselves that historically we have disowned. That does not change until we actually get into the ring with the totality of who we are, and we're able to name our shadow and be like, oh yeah, there's that thing I do where I like to chase what doesn't want me, because I think that if I chase them and I catch them and I convert them, then that must mean I am so worthy. Like, I'm so worthy of being chosen. If I can prove to this person who doesn't love me that if I can like make them love me somehow, then I must have worth and value as a human being. We try and play that out through chemistry, and chemistry will pull us in that direction every fucking time. And until we are willing to look at those parts and be like, oh yeah, there's like this tender part of me, like the 6-year-old in me who just, you know, wanted mom to be available. And like, for all we know, you know, that experience was like, you're, you know, a 5-year-old and you're like, mom, you know, and she's like, stop, because there's like a pot boiling over on the stove and she needs to tend to that so it doesn't spill onto you. So like, it comes from a good place.
Yeah.
And but as the 5-year-old, we don't know. All we see is mom just dismissed us and turned away, and then she became unavailable. And so that becomes coded in our blueprint as this is what love is. And so then chemistry is designed to lead you back to that original blueprint of what the 3-year-old, the 5-year-old, the 7-year-old coded love as. And so it often is anchored to those places where we felt not loved, ironically. Like those moments where we felt isolated, alone, abandoned, and then we code that. That's what relationship is.
Yeah.
Relationship is being turned away from. So then chemistry is like, cool, I've got the memo. Look at all these people who don't want to be with you. Like them.
Yeah.
Go after them, because you couldn't convert mom to turn around in that moment, but maybe you could convert them to turn around. This person who's totally unrelated, you know, as like an adult, you know, and we think that, oh, if I'm just able to convert them, then that will change what happened with mom when I was 5 in the kitchen when she turned away from me to tend to the boiling pot. You know, or, you know, sometimes it is more severe where our caregiver is actually unavailable emotionally. Like they've got their own stuff that was never tended to, and they just don't have the bandwidth to be available, and they can act in really cold and abusive ways. That is also the reality for some people. And it really just comes down to what is coded in your blueprint. What did you learn that relationships were? And we can figure out what's in our blueprint pretty fast by looking at what attracts us. Like, are we attracted to what is good for us? Or are we attracted to the things that will hurt us? Because if we're attracted to the things that hurt us, we know that there's somewhere in our blueprint where we have associated love and relationship with avoidance, love and relationship with dismissal, love and relationship with betrayal or not belonging. Like there are these programs that get coded into us. And then once we know what the program is, then we can recode it. That's the cool thing about being human and your mind machine is you can recode it just like a computer.
Yeah.
But you can't recode something until you know what the original code is. Otherwise, the original code keeps running. We have to literally rewrite that.
Right.
And we can't rewrite it until we bring some awareness to the mix of like, well, what am I attracted to? And more importantly, what part of me is attracted to that? Is my soul attracted to that? This is a good way to determine whether or not someone's good for you or not. Does my soul feel safe with this person? Because if your soul doesn't feel safe with them, you're probably on the track of wound mating. You're probably about to follow that chemistry down this trail where you get burned time and time and time again.
Yeah.
And then it reinforces the story that you're not lovable. Like that's all chemistry does. Chemistry in that context is designed to reinforce all of the wounds you have about not being enough. And then when we start moving in the direction of heart mating and looking in the direction of what is good for us, the biggest complaint or like resistance is like, well, or boring, or like, oh, so now I have to be in a relationship with someone I'm not attracted to.
Yeah.
Which is not true. Like, you're still going to be attracted to your partner. There's just not like these super high highs and like crashing lows. And like, it's always just doing this. Like, it's just going to the extreme. And instead, like in a heartmate, you're attracted to them. Like, you like what's happening on a physical level there. Like, you feel sexual attraction to them, but you don't lose yourself. You're able to advocate for your needs. So this is another way to tell. Could you tell this person what your need is in the moment? If you can't tell them, it's something to unpack. Like, is it because your soul doesn't actually feel safe? A lot of the time, that's the case.
Yeah.
And maybe the soul doesn't feel safe because you actually need to be in more intimate union with yourself for a little while longer. Like, you shouldn't actually be dating yet. It also could be that this person is fundamentally misaligned for you. And you not being able to speak up and speak your truth has a lot to do with how your energies are collaborating together and how they're colliding together. Because your body is getting a lot of information about who this person is and how you're going to commingle with each other, that, you know, you're not consciously aware of. And how we can become consciously aware of it is if we look at, can I speak my truth to this person? Can I reveal my needs? Can I reveal my boundaries? And do it in a way that invites them to meet me. I'm not going to be bossy and bitchy about it, but like, I'm going to be firm and compassionate about it. And how are they going to deal with that? But if I can't even bring myself to utter those words out of my mouth, I'm like, I'll just go with the flow. I'll be super chill. I'll be the chill one.
Yeah.
I don't want to be high maintenance.
Yeah.
Excuse me? Like, you have to maintain like a sanctuary around yourself and your needs. You have to. And no one likes being in a relationship with someone who's going to abandon themselves over and over and over and over, because that person is fundamentally unsafe. Because you never know who that person actually is if they're too busy like morphing and shifting and abandoning and people pleasing all the time. You don't actually know who that person is. And that is not going to feel safe to someone who is more emotionally integrated with themselves and who isn't chasing chemistry. They're going to find that unappealing.
Yeah.
And so when we move on this path of heart mating, like, you're still going to be attracted. You're still going to want to bang them. And you're going to be able to tell them all of your pre-banging needs. And you're going to be able to set boundaries with them. And you're going to be able to reveal parts of yourself that historically have not felt safe to reveal, in appropriate timing, of course, and know that that person is going to hold that container of respect with you. And you're going to do the same for them. And, that is so much to do with getting in communion with our shadow and getting in communion with these parts of us that historically we've rejected, or that we've disowned, or that we just don't want to be true about who we are. And that will really help set the course on, choosing better, but also not being as intoxicated by that chemistry. Because when we're running unconscious, we're just intoxicated by chemistry.
Yeah.
But the more self-awareness we generate, we can see the separation. We can see like, oh, there's that impulse to follow chemistry. But how about I actually bring my soul online here and my self-awareness online here and determine, is this person actually a safe emotional choice for me? Does my soul feel safe with them? And if it doesn't, well, we probably have gone as far as we can go. Or is there something that I need to, process, work through within myself first, and then I can reevaluate that with them? Does that all make sense?
Yeah. 100%. So I was actually having this chat with Jules the other day, and he was telling me about this chick that he was chatting with, and she kind of was manipulating him a bit, and we're kind of, he was like, I don't know, like, I don't know why, but I kept trying to like get her attention. I was like, oh yeah, I know what you mean. Like you're trying to get the attention of somebody that's not right for you. And he's like, yeah, but like I felt like we had good chemistry. And I was like, yeah, it's funny because I spoke to Mark about that, and then he said, but then in the last week I've met this other girl, super lovely and genuine, right? I was like, oh, good. He goes, yeah, and I feel safe around her. I was like, that's amazing. And I said, well, so I haven't done a lot of dating, right? And I've been single for 6 years, and my past relationships haven't been the right ones for me, and they haven't been safe and all that kind of stuff. And I've been attracted to that and thinking that we did have chemistry, right? But I don't. And like you said, the love is like up and down, like the highs and the lows, like it's, and then, but I've never actually, well, I don't know if I've felt what good, safe love is, as I said to Jules, I'm like, I don't know what it is, like I could see like a really attractive girl and then I chat to her and she feels really calm and stuff to be around. But I'm like, oh, I'm not really attracted to her anymore kind of thing. But if I see another chick that's really attractive and she's kind of arrogant and rude and a bit up herself, I'm like,
googly-eyed.
Give me more, like it's crazy. It's fucking crazy. And I'm like curious to know how, like, if that happens, if I like meet a chick that's like gorgeous, I see her, she's gorgeous, and then I talk to her and she feels safe and calm to be around, but then I lose interest. Is it because that, like, is it because of my wiring, my love template, or is it because maybe that like a personality, I just didn't really jive with their personality. She was a lovely person, but
yeah, I mean, if there's something like in terms of your deal breakers that didn't align, or your non-negotiables that didn't align. So a non-negotiable is, this is the form of relationship I'm looking for. So let's say you want a monogamous partnership and the person you're talking to, over a series of couple dates reveals that they want to be in an open polyamorous relationship. Well, then it's a non-starter because this is a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Other non-negotiables can be kids. Like if you're dating for the sake of partnership, or children, something that you see in your future. Marriage can be another one, and faith. Those tend to be like the four big ones that we would need to be clear on. Like, what is our position on marriage? What is our position on kids? Like, are we looking for a monogamous, open, polyamorous dynamic? Like, what's the deal there? And then faith, because faith is one of those things that will fundamentally bust people apart.
Yeah.
If there isn't alignment there, if that's important to them, that their partner shares their faith.
Yeah. Okay.
So there can be people who share different faiths, but it wasn't a non-negotiable for them, for their partner to also have the same faith.
Right.
So you have to assess that. And then your deal breakers are the qualities of characteristics that you are absolutely yes, like this has to be there, and absolutely no, this cannot be there. So I would go with picking 3 and 3. So absolutely yes, integrity, absolutely yes, humor, absolutely yes, like playfulness, let's say.
Yeah.
And then absolute no's, lying and deceit, addiction, and those are the 2 that kind of come to mind for me. And so if you come across any material that gives you information about those deal breakers, let's say they actively lie to you, well, deal breaker, gone as far as we can go.
Yeah. And
so how we can kind of tell if it's my wiring or a fundamental misalignment is, does the attraction decrease as I get to know this person more and I feel more intimately connected to them because I'm actually walking the path of rewiring, am I becoming unattracted to them because they've revealed something that is either a non-negotiable or a deal breaker and I'm not listening to it? And so if it's the first one, stick with it, because there's probably some gold in there, and you have to actually rewire this in relationship to other. You can't fully rewire it on your own. Like it's going to get rewired with other people and in other relationships. And you actually do have the code for what safe, secure love feels like, because you have felt that at least in our friendship. Like that, our friendship has coded that. And I'm sure there are other friendships that have coded that for you. And so that's where we have to originally kind of look to of like, oh, well, how do I feel in that relationship? It's not a romantic one, but like I am getting that code of what healthy love feels like. And I'm getting comfortable with that so that I can now move in the direction of romantic, healthy love. And if this person has, really started to reveal parts of themselves and you're like, they're a good human, like we're aligned on our non-negotiables, and I haven't like seen any of my no's, my absolute no's, and like the absolute yeses, they kind of got all of those things, then our shadow is going to throw out one last ditch effort to try and sabotage the fuck out of that connection, because it really wants you to go back to chemistry. It wants you to go back to that old template. And so it's going to pull out every possible stop it can. And it'll go so far as like finding something ridiculous about them. They're like, ugh, yeah, that just doesn't work for me. Like, ugh, I can't believe they wore red socks. Like, oh my God, I can't even be in a relationship with this person. Like it's something that has nothing to do with their character or with their ability to be a good partner. And like this will happen where we fixate on like a body part.
Yeah.
We're like, I don't really like how crooked their index finger is.
Yeah.
Yes, this isn't for me.
They've got 2 more eyelashes on their left eye than they do on their right. Not into that.
Not into it. Like we'll come up with all sorts of ridiculous reasons to give ourselves an out if it's aligned. And that's a good thing when that happens, because it means something is changing in you. It means that old template is freaking the fuck out, because you're actually changing things, and you've actually changed things, and you're changing more things that is threatening to that old paradigm, which is good because we want to change the old paradigm. So we have to have that ability to discern, is it because there's a mismatch here because we fundamentally want different things? Or like the character qualities that I'm looking for, they either don't have, or they've shown me that they've got at least one of my deal breakers. So like once there's one non-negotiable that shows up, or one deal breaker that shows up that is incongruent, that's usually a sign that we've gone as far as we can go with someone.
Yeah.
Because we're not in the business of converting someone to want something that they don't want. And so if they want a polyamorous relationship, you want a monogamous one, and you're like, well, I'll just keep dating them to see if I can change that. Then we're going back to that old template of converting someone to love us who can't ever fully meet us.
Yeah.
Okay?
I remember. Sorry.
That's my distinction for it.
Perfect. I remember with my ex-fiance, probably, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months in, like I always wanted kids, and she was like, she said something, and I was like, oh, what? You don't want kids? And she's like, no, I don't want kids. And I was kind of like, oh, why not? She's like, oh, because I'd rather just like look after other people's kids, and then I can just give them back, right? I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, oh, she'll change her mind. Don't worry, she'll change her mind. Right? And then we went through the relationship, and then I think maybe we got to the 3-year mark, and I think she was like, oh, I think I want to have kids. And I was like, all right, well, like, we need to sit down and chat about it, blah, blah, blah. And then it kind of never got spoken about. And then we split up, and, like, so I don't know why the conversation came up, but basically she was like, well, I just don't think we should be together because like you want kids and I don't want kids. I was like, what? I thought you
What?
did want kids.
You just said.
Yeah. Yeah. And then she's like, no, I never wanted kids. And I was like, oh yeah, 3 to 4 months in, she did say she didn't want kids. She's right.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I can change that about her.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Which is dumb. And I've learned from
Yeah.
that now. So yeah.
Like there
Pretty
are
funny.
things that could change about someone. Like let's say their haircut or their sense of style. Those things can be changed.
Yeah.
But fundamentals of who they are and what they desire and what they want and what is right for themselves in their life cannot be changed.
Yeah.
And it is arrogant and the opposite of love to think that we can do that.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember my dad saying how, and I don't want to come across sexist, but he was just using females as the term, but like a lot of females would get with a guy and they're like, oh, I'm going to clone him into this perfect man. I'm going to change this, this, and this about him. Right. And then a few years down the line, right, he's like turned into this puppy dog because she's changed all this stuff about him. And then she turns around and kind of is annoyed at him. It's like, you don't stand up for yourself anymore. You know, you don't do anything that you wanted, that you love when I first met you. Like you completely changed. Like, why did you change? Right. And it's like, whoa, like, you know, you wanted to change all this stuff about this person to clone what you thought was the perfect person.
Yeah.
But now that they've changed, you don't like that they've changed.
Yeah. So like there's no way to win with that person.
Yeah.
Is really what that comes down to.
Yeah.
And like we think that changing another person will give us a deeper sense of relief and safety within ourselves, which is why we try and convert people. It's why we do that, is like, if they're this way, then I won't feel this way. And I don't want to feel this way, so I must change them, instead of like, oh, they're behaving in this way, it's activating this in me, like I need to go inward and create more intimacy with that part of myself. And then I'm going to look to see, like, is this like a deal breaker for me? Is this a non-negotiable for me? Like, and if it is, I'm not going to proceed. And that's what I was talking about at the beginning. Like there's this lack of what is the word I'm trying to find? Starts with an S. Sacredness.
Sex. Oh, not sex.
There's a lack of sacredness that goes into the selection of partners. Because if we're actually selecting from a place of sacred honoring, I choose you fully as you are today. I don't need you to become anything other than who you are today. But so much of dating is like, who will this person become? And how can I mold them and shift them and change them? Instead of the person that they're being today, the person that they're showing me that they are today, does that work for me? Because I can't bank on any possible future version of them.
Yeah.
I have to choose the version that's in front of me today. Does that work for me? Yes or no?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, you don't proceed. If the answer is yes, then proceed and enjoy your relationship with this person.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel good to be in relationship with someone who doesn't accept you. And that's what that comes down to. I don't accept the way that you are. And in order for you to gain my acceptance, you must change who you fundamentally are. Then maybe I'll give you my approval and my acceptance and my love. And I wonder where that reminds us of, you know, where that template comes from. Like it's a very old thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's part of our blueprint, which is why so many people do it until they don't.
True.
Until they realize that that doesn't work. Because we will do these things until we don't. We will do these things until they are no longer effective. And like people get a payoff, you know, they get to avoid certain things in themselves by relating this way until it gets to that breaking point. And at that breaking point, that's when we're like, oh, okay, this isn't working anymore. I got to do things differently in order to actually potentially get the result I'm actually after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I find it so interesting. So many, well, I'm going to say it from a man's point of view, because I'm a man, and so many men complain about their partners, and how that they control them, and, like, don't let them do this and don't let them do that. And like, I think it's fucking crazy, because it's like, you don't have to be with that person that is doing that. Like, why are you complaining about something you can control? Like, you can control not being in that relationship, and people will be like, oh, but you don't know, there's just so many things, it's, we're married and we've got kids and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, but this all would have like started before you got married and before you had kids, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think it's really, really crazy.
No one can control you in that sense without your consent. Like, in this context, like like, control can be a thing when there's like a legitimate power dynamic, and like there's so many other things going on there. But in this particular instance, like, they are also invested in the identity of being controlled.
Yeah, true.
And there's something that they're getting out of that dynamic, or there's something that they get to avoid by participating in that dynamic. So maybe it is that one-up righteousness. Like, I get to be righteous about being, the victim and being better because I don't control my partner. And they get to be the villain. And so I get to extort attention and connection and affection from the people that I complain to, because it's the only way I know how to generate attention and connection with my friends or my family. And so I have to keep this game in play with my partner in order to actually get love. And so while they're complaining, they're not changing it because they're getting something out of it. And at any point, they could put a boundary in place with their partner and say, no, you can't talk to me like that. I realize that we've been playing this game. We've been doing this dance for a long time. And I am no longer a yes to this dance. But if you want to do this dance instead, I'm so down.
Yeah.
You want to learn this new way of relating, I'm so here for it. And so it doesn't have to be like the abrupt, like, leave the relationship right away, but we do have to start shifting the way that we're relating in that relationship.
Yeah.
Because if one person is trying to control the other person, there's a whole world of needs, emotional needs, that have not been addressed. That's why we try and control another person's behavior, because we have needs and we don't want to be responsible for them. So we think, if I just can control their behavior, then I don't have to feel those feelings that are indicating that I have a need that I have to advocate for, which is very vulnerable, and I don't want to be vulnerable. So I'm just going to control them.
Yeah, exactly.
It's bananas.
Yeah, it's crazy
stuff that we do. Yeah, it's wild.
And there's some things in that like, I'm sure we could have just branched off into another fucking conversation.
We'll have to do another podcast.
Yeah, I know. We've like, I think we've been
almost
going for
2 hours.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
See? Vortex.
Exactly. You just fucking get stuck in the radical self-love vortex.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually, there's a chick that lives in Vancouver that came over to a friend's wedding, and her name's Maggie. And I was talking to her about, she mentioned Be Fresh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, hey, some cool shit goes down in Be Fresh. And
it's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
I showed her a picture of you, and I was like, if you see this lady in Be Fresh, give her a hug from me. And I said, you want to meet her, trust me. Yeah, because she's like into astrology and star signs.
Ooh,
and
fun.
Fun. So
amazing.
Yeah.
So I will be prepared for some random lady coming up to give me a hug. Okay, good to know. Amazing.
Yeah.
I look forward to that serendipitous moment.
Yeah. Yeah. She's a legend too. So,
Cool.
alrighty. So to wrap it up,
Mm-hmm.
I'll just ask some finishing questions.
Perfect.
Do you have a morning routine, and
Okay.
what does it consist of?
I mean, my morning routine changes as I do.
Okay.
So I'm not super rigid with it anymore, but that's only because I built out that discipline.
So you don't fluff your pillows for 4 fucking hours like your partner does?
No, I do not. If anything, I just stand there and watch him do it. I'm like, is this really going to make or break the day? I don't know. For me, it won't, but for him, it will. So I just let him do what he needs to do in order to be available to his day. But for me, like, I like to have water in the morning when I first wake up. So that's part of my routine. Depending on my mood, I will either have complete silence. Like, I really like silence in the morning. There will be other days where I really want to learn something. So I'll throw on a podcast or an audiobook. And then I have a ritual of making coffee. So that's kind of my morning routine, is to really make my coffee and like know that I'm putting something good into my body, having some water. When I first wake up, like, part of my routine is just saying thank you. Like, thanks for letting me be here another day.
So it's like self-love, right?
First up, and I'll lay in bed and I'll often like just kind of listen to the sounds of what's happening and just have a little moment of gratitude, especially in the summer when the crows are screeching. I just listen to like all of the sounds of the birds, and I'm just delighted by like this entire ecosystem that's happening outside of my bedroom window. And then I start like going off on these tangents in my mind about spirituality and connection and like, you know, spirit animals and like how they connect and talk to each other and like what is the message that they're trying to, like, I'll just go in those tangents. So that's part of my routine, is having those moments with myself.
Is there unicorns in the trees with the birds?
Exactly. Maybe there is today. I don't know. And then I usually start my day. And I mean, back in the day, I was really rigid and like, oh, I must gratitude journal and I need to meditate and I need to do all of these things. And now I'm just more in my feminine flow, and I get to those things at some point in the day. As long as they happen at some point in the day, I'm in alignment with myself. And so how they happen, when they happen, I allow more of my feminine to take the lead on that. But then the structure of my masculine is just having, these are the things that you're going to need to have a touch point with at some point in the day.
Yeah. It's interesting how you say depending on what mood you're in. And not to get so deep into this, but it's interesting how you're allowed to have different moods. You know what I mean? Like, I was shamed in one of my past relationships to have a different mood. Like, and she would always say like, your fucking mood swings, you know? And like, I used to feel shameful for feeling maybe a bit angry or a bit agitated about something. So anyway, another tangent for another day.
Yep. We'll deal with moodiness next time. Noted.
So you don't meditate every day?
No.
Okay.
And if I do, like, it's more of an active meditation. So I really love going for walks and like collecting evidence of things that please and delight me. And then there will be pockets of my life where I need to sit in silence and download. It really depends on what is being asked of me at that stage of my journey. So if I'm in a space where I'm constantly creating, I might want to go out and like get inspiration from walking and collecting that evidence. if I'm spending a lot of time in the presence of other people, that's when I need the silence and the stillness of just sitting in meditation.
Yeah.
And so it really depends on what is going on for me in any particular month or chapter of my life, what modality I'm really most drawn to. And I do listen to like a yoga nidra meditation before I go to sleep every night.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not sitting in meditation on my meditation cushion every day, but I do listen to a meditation before I go to sleep every night.
Okay.
So,
and would you fall asleep to that?
yeah.
Yeah. And then like mid sleep, you just like rip your earbuds out and throw them away, or?
I don't even put earbuds in. I just play it and I force Jamie to listen to it.
Sucker.
But also like I put it on like a lower volume so I can still hear it.
Yeah.
But then it turns itself off. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I can just drift off into sleep.
Beautiful. Alrighty. So what book are you reading now? And what is a powerful lesson you've learned from it?
Well, there is actually a book sitting next to me that I'm reading with Jamie in our book club. It's called We Do.
Oh, yeah.
By Stan Tacton. And what I'm really loving about this book is it is a roadmap to, it's technically a book, like a pre-marriage book, but it is also very applicable to partnership and making sure that you are talking about the things that really matter when it comes to building your partnership, and like endlessly learning and exploring and just coming back to take the temperature of the relationship on a regular basis. Like, how are we doing? Like, what are the ways in which we're really doing well, and like where do we need some tuning up? And this book is a really great reminder of like the ways in which Jamie and I are really strong with each other, and also the areas where there might be more room for improvement. So
beautiful.
That's my takeaway. I'm also reading this really good one on people pleasing.
Yeah.
It's called The Disease to Please.
The Disease to Please.
It's so fucking good.
Oh, yeah?
I love it. And it's so practical. So it talks about the psychology and the behavioral patterns behind people pleasing. And then it actually gives you practical ways to start rewiring those behaviors.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
really cool.
I'm digging that one too.
Yeah, I like books like that have exercises in them.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, because they can like keep you like sort of focused, because you got to do the exercises and stuff. Yeah, totally. It's really cool. Yeah. So the last thing, is there anything that you would like to plug anything you want to sell, or where can people find you if they want to learn more about you? I know you did mention something about a book club before.
Yeah, and I'm doing a webinar. I don't know when this is going to come out, but my webinar is on December 15th, and it's on understanding emotional manipulation and how to prevent that in your love life and in your relationships. And so all the information for that is on my Instagram, Radical Self-Love. And then Jamie and I have a school, Legendary Love Academy, and we'll be releasing a membership in the new year, which is like the one-stop shop. If you want to get into the world of relational education and love education, and you don't want to buy a bazillion books and like self-study in that way, for the price of one book a month, we have a whole library of content that we're going to cover things like needs and boundaries and communication and self-love and self-worth. And we'll always be adding to that membership site. So it's kind of the place where you go and then you cherry pick the information that is most relevant to you and your relationship status or your path of love. And you can kind of get in and get the basics of those pieces that you might need, instead of having to like source it out somehow, some way. And there's audios in there, there's videos, there's worksheets. So there's all these different ways to consume the content, but then we make sure that we have practical ways for you to integrate that into your life, so it doesn't stay up in your head. It moves into your cells and starts shifting your behavior. So those are the things that we're kind of up to in the next month or two. And if that feels aligned and right for someone to go explore, then great. And you can always hit me up on Instagram. I'm on there pretty regularly, and you can ask me any questions through that platform.
Oh, beautiful.
Cool.
That's very kind of you. I love how also in the start of your podcast, it's like, it drives us crazy that people want true love, but they're not too sure how to do it. So yeah, I love that. And I love how you're putting together an academy to teach people about love.
Totally.
And you guys make it so fun. And
I know, right?
Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah, he's such a character, and like,
Oh.
fuck, he's so funny. And it does bug me that relationships are such an important part for so many people, but yet we don't know where to begin.
Yeah.
And then I also see like all of these programs that are out there that, yeah, well, they're great, but they're so inaccessible for the average person who doesn't have like $1,000 budget a month for personal development.
Yeah.
But like if you have $30 a month, then you can get into the academy. And so like if you're buying one book a month, then you can get into the academy and get the equivalent of hundreds of books.
Yeah.
You know, and then we're constantly updating and putting more information in there. So we just wanted it to be a way that we can get that education into the hearts and the hands of people who, you know, maybe don't have the time to go do a year-long program with me, or, you know, a longer term coaching program, or that budget is going towards, you know, paying their fucking rent and, you know, putting food on the table. And like, we so get that. And so we wanted to find a way to still get this information and the education out in a way that would align with someone who just has, you know, a $30 budget a month to explore the world of development.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, mate. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. This was so fun.
Yeah.
I loved it. Let me know when it's live so I can share it.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And I love your guts.